All right, we're live, Coco.
Hooray! This is
Yeah,
exciting.
cool. Well, thanks for jumping on today. Excited to be able to talk with you
Of course.
about just what you've been building. And obviously, we met each other through Webflow. I've been able to work together for a while. So just love to be able to talk with you today about, you know, who you are, what is Walker and Dunlop, what you're sort of seeing in the market, and, how teams are shifting as the landscape is shifting. So, yeah, maybe we'll just kind of kick it off, and you could give me a quick intro around like who are you and what's your day to day look like?
Yeah, sure, of course. So, well, thanks for having me on. This is super exciting. Obviously, we've actually known each other for a couple of years now, and so it's a little odd talking about everything that we've built between our two teams. But I'll do my best to kind of encapsulate it as quickly as I can. So, I'm Coco Zoe. I'm the VP of Digital Marketing here at Walker and Dunlop. Walker and Dunlop is a commercial real estate company. We're one of the largest commercial real estate finance and advisory services firms in the U.S. and now overseas as well. We recently opened our first office in the UK.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think I started joined the company about 3 years ago, and very shortly after I joined, we decided we were going to change our website. Our CMO came in, looked at the website, said, "This is the first thing we have to fix," and it was exactly the right decision. So there was a lot of work that was done around not just fixing the website and kind of rebuilding that entire experience, but really understanding where Walker and Dunlop as a brand had grown, where we had gaps in our marketing processes, in our overall brand story,
Hmm.
and a website was a big part of that. So I was really, really grateful, actually, looking back to the first year I was here, getting introduced to Webflow, and then very quickly after getting introduced, Mason, to you and your team. We really could not have done what we did together without your team, the great work that you guys put in, and so many other collaborators across the board here at Walker and Dunlop. So I've been doing digital marketing for about a little over 10, 11, 12 years now, I guess. So, I started out my career in WordPress like a lot of people and
Hmm.
have seen kind of the web kind of ecosystem grow very, very quickly. And I bumped into Webflow actually, about 5, 6 years ago when I was still kind of more focused on the consumer side of the business. It was like at the time trying to compete with WordPress and was really surprised and actually really impressed to be reintroduced to Webflow again as we were rebuilding this website a couple of years ago, and just the great enterprise feature it now has. And beyond that, just how much it has embraced kind of a modern website platform versus just a CMS focused kind of software piece of kit. So that's been really exciting and a big part of my career here at Walker and Dunlop. So I have the privilege of leading a team of encompassing email, advertising, web, and digital analytics. So I'm very lucky to be able to see and have influence over kind of everything that we do from a digital standpoint, which gives my team and me a lot of freedom to experiment and try new things. And very grateful too, as well, for the investment. Our company is very big on technology, it's very big on the importance of marketing. So I feel that we're in a very unique place where it can be hard sometimes to see the value of brand initiatives, of some of the things that we do in marketing that are more creative, that are more around kind of pushing the brand forward and building that impression. Some of that is hard to tie to kind of revenue and deals, but our leadership, our CEO, our COO, our CMO sees the value of that. They understand the value of that. So there's a lot of investment in tools like Webflow, partners like EA to build out the very best experience that we can have for clients. And that's given us the freedom to do a lot of stuff here, I think, at Walker and Dunlop that other places might not have been as comfortable putting that level of investment into.
Awesome. Well, just high five back to you as well because one, I'm just grateful to be able to have partnered with you and your team. You guys are just stellar, and to be able to give full credit when we worked on the replatform and redesign, like you guys actually led the design,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's
Which
right.
was fantastic. Shout out to Matt here in Atlanta,
Absolutely.
and him and his team. And I think the thing that was really also special is how, like, it's like when we first started talking, it's like, okay, well, here we're sort of thinking about this as it's a web project, but it's also sort of a brand project. And your team had a lot of ideas, and I think being able to have that sort of back and forth, and also have some really clear swim lanes so that
Yeah,
there could be a direction that you guys wanted to pursue out there in the world, and then trusting us as we had kind of the responsibility is saying, okay, how can we build not just what has been sort of designed so far, but how can we go in and look at this as a full system? What does this need to do as it moves into Webflow? How does it need to think about scale and all this stuff? So I think it was really quickly after we got started that there was a lot of trust that was put in our team, but then just, I mean, again, I think whatever you're doing to help like build out that build out the group and build out just like the overall collaboration.
Yeah.
It was great and it made our jobs just a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I
that
think to that point, one of the things that I would call out as a very special piece of what we did together with your team, with our team, was that sense of collaboration. We had great partnerships with Matt and his creative team, very talented designers there. We had great collaboration with Sam Patel and our content team, very talented copywriters and brand strategists there. And I think and obviously with you guys, with the breadth of what you guys seen in terms of Webflow, in terms of development, in terms of user experience. And to your point, that was, I think, it wasn't like we had like a set hierarchy of like, this is your swim lane, this is my swim lane, we're going to stick to it. It was very much a sense in which everyone has kind of an area. We want everyone to be talking into one of them,
yep,
but at the end of the day, somebody needs to make a decision. If it's going to be a development decision, it's going to be this team. If it's going to be a creative decision, it's going to be this team. But there were a lot of compromises, a lot of back and forth that was done. And all of us felt, I think, at the end of the day, that we were sharpening one another. It was
yep,
about getting the right thing done, not one team versus another trying to make a decision. And I think that was a key part of our experience with you guys and our experience internally, which I think any project, especially this scale, probably would have fallen apart if you didn't have that trust, if you didn't have that established camaraderie, if you will, between all of our
yep,
teams saying, hey, we understand this is where you're coming from. This is how we view it. I defer to you on this decision, but I want you to hear out this point. And the other party saying, yep, let me figure out how I can modify some of this or communicate it in a different way to help you understand or to accommodate that concern that you have. So that was one of the things that I think really, beyond the technology being amazing, because Webflow is a great platform,
yep,
beyond the partnerships that we had, it was that sense in which we were all here pushing to the same goal, and that everyone felt they had a voice in it, but also everyone felt they had ownership over kind of their areas of expertise, which I think was key to our success, and especially with you guys as well, being able to say, Edgar Allan, you guys know best when it comes to experience design, when it comes to what you're seeing across the Webflow platform and how best we leverage the Webflow platform to do what we wanted to do. So that, I think, that was a really great and really collaborative experience. I would do it all over again, because even if it was
oh,
stressful and we were working long hours, it was some of the most fun I think all of us had together.
yeah, yeah, right back at you. And you know, we I think also I just kind of congratulate the full teams. Like there was a lot of work, but I think the way that the communication was structured, it was always uh, I would say kind of a lot of fun, as you were saying. Like, so there was definitely a lot of back and forth there. But I wanted maybe uh, back up a bit, and you were talking as we were jumping on the call, like, you joined Walker and Dunlop. Your CMO knew that needed to go in and do something different, and you had experience with WordPress, but then you were like also kind of looked around at Webflow, and I'm just curious, and I've actually never asked you this. So, um, like, you know, why, like, what, like, and for anyone that's just jumping in and listening, I think the things that I want to be able to cover off on today is like, hey, for teams that are maybe looking at Webflow as a platform,
Yep.
like, why did you kind of make that decision? But also, for teams that are thinking about all the things that are happening in the market. So I want to be able to talk about the things that are happening in the market
Yep.
today, and then how you're planning for that
Yep.
moving forward. So those would be sort of like if we follow the bouncing ball here, and Coco and I were just talking about like, I've got some notes written down, but we're both more like kind of jazz musicians here. So there'll be plenty of improvisation, if I can even say that
Yeah.
correctly.
Yeah. Off the cuff.
Um,
That's the best.
yeah, yeah. So, yeah, but like what, as you're coming on and like, new role, new directive, what led you to saying like, yes, this is the platform or this is the direction that we want to be able to go?
That's a great question, actually. I have to think back a little bit because we did actually look at WordPress. We looked at
Yep.
WordPress because, I mean, you cannot look at
Yep.
website platforms without looking at WordPress. Everyone asks about it. And, you know, you talk to your engineering teams, no one in the engineering team thinks highly of WordPress or like it's, you know, buggy, it's got security problems. No one in enterprise setting wants to deal with WordPress. And then you've got, you know, your website builders that are more in the consumer space, Wix, Squarespace, you know, they put a lot of money into marketing. They're everywhere. You know, you can't have gone anywhere in website hosting without hearing about them. And then you have your, you know, 2,000 pound, you know, enterprise gorilla systems, right? Your
Yep.
Adobe Experience Manager, Sitecore, all of those kind of quote unquote enterprise systems, which they have their own place. And I think we looked at all of them. We did a lot of study in them. It did help that we had people on the team that had experience in that. So I've worked in Drupal, I've worked in Django, I've worked with companies that were in Sitecore,
Mm.
Adobe Experience Manager in WordPress. There were some big companies that I worked for that use WordPress and use it successfully. So I think well, we were looking at all of that, and I think our CMO said it best. She said, "Look, I don't want to have a developer team. I'm very proud of the fact that everyone on the digital team here is highly technical. We
Mhm.
teach everyone HTML, CSS, JavaScript, not because they need it to do their job, but because we feel it's important for you to understand how all of this works. But we don't want to be developers. And we were also kind of trying to balance the resource asks on our
Mhm.
engineering teams. Our engineering teams build some really incredible products. They're focused on things that will move the needle for our business teams and kind of back-end applications in terms of mobile applications and interactive tools that we can then use to sell. They are not as keen, understandably, about trying to maintain a marketing site. So there was that sense in which we needed a tool that empowered us as marketers to do what we do best without having a lot of technical overhead, whether that's hiring an engineer or a front-end developer or you know, going fully outsourced and you know, kind of being at the mercy of a outside team, which is kind of funny because we work very closely with you guys. You guys do a lot of development for us, and so our goal was never to get rid of developers.
Yep.
That was not what we were trying to do. We weren't trying to save money on that. But the idea would be was and what the problem that we had previously was our website was a limitation. We could
Yeah.
not, there were things that we could not do, or there were campaigns that we were planning where the website was a defining factor. What the
Mhm.
website could and could not do prevented us from going down certain paths. And so we were really looking at it as not necessarily a technology question. I mean, I'm a huge open source person. I really love
Sure.
open source projects. So it wasn't really necessarily a, you know, security concern thing, though that did play a role in it. But it was about what platform would help unlock certain capabilities as opposed to lock us into either an ecosystem like an enterprise AEM system
Yep.
might, or you know, on the complete flip side, be too simplistic where maybe it's really easy to edit, but beyond simple things you can't do really cool
Yep.
experiences with. So that's where we kind of landed on Webflow, and I give Matt Cabral on our team full credit because he was the one who actually introduced us to Webflow. He had worked with Webflow before at his kind of a previous leadership role that he'd led at an agency. He was really impressed with the tool. And again, at that time, it wasn't a fully enterprise tool. So we weren't thinking too much about Webflow. We were like, we'll take a look at it. It's probably not what we want.
Sure.
What we were really impressed by beyond the technology, and I've told this to Webflow, I love their technology. I love everything that they're building. I don't, and I think they'll say this. We don't necessarily have the best and the greatest technology. They have really, really good
Mhm.
technology, but you know, there are definitely tools out there that are way more complex, and you can go the headless route, which is like fully, you know, custom built. They're not designed to do that. What I really love about Webflow is I can call up our account person and she will get me an answer right away. The
Yes.
enterprise
Yep.
support is incredible. And, you know, like every company, they have certain things that they run into, bugs, issues.
Yeah.
The biggest thing for us is we know we have a partner there that really genuinely cares. And I can't say that about a lot of our technology partners that I've worked with in the past. Webflow, what really impressed us was just a level of enterprise support, truly enterprise support that
Yep.
they offer. And that's been played out through the last 2.5 years that we've had them.
Mhm.
It's just been on example of over example of areas where they are proactive about their support of us. They understand that our business relies very heavily on our website being available, on it being the best kind of quality of service. And they kind of strip away all of that complexity. I don't need to worry
Yep.
about server hosting or whether our security certificates are up to date. I don't have to worry too much about you know, form spam and things like that. They kind of take care of all of that. And they're very proactive about not just reaching out to us about issues that we need to address, but also about things that we can do to make our business to support our businesses better. So
Yep.
they're always asking, what are your features that your business stakeholders asking for? What can we do to make you as a marketing team more effective? And we've actually seen, I know there are plenty of times where I talk to a account support person, they're like, oh yeah, I'll talk to our product team and we'll get it on our roadmap. And we're like, yeah, right. I'm not going to
Yep.
see it. But we actually see that with Webflow where we say, hey, we have this problem. And 6 months later at Webflow Conf, lo and behold, there is that solution that we were looking for that they've been building with feedback from customers like us. So I know it sounds a little bit like unbelievable, but that's how I feel about Webflow. And I've seen that kind of come to life in the last 2.5 years that we work with them. So that's really, I think, the crux of our decision to go with Webflow is that unbeatable enterprise support that they have and really the genuine care I think they have for their
Yep.
customers and understanding that the website is not a means onto itself. It is a tool for the business and therefore has to support whatever the business's needs are.
Yeah. It's funny you said that because, like we were introduced to each other through Webflow,
Right.
right? So their team introduced you to our team, and we started working with them over a decade ago, which is wild. But it was that exact same thing. So when we were growing the agency, I was like, I just know that we're going to have
Yeah.
to do something different if we're going to meet the needs of our customers. And we have this idea of being story first, that
Right.
let's get back to what is fundamentally human, and story is the most basic way in which we come to know the world. But I was like, if I'm going to pay off that promise, then we can't get locked down in a bunch of ticky tacky little like Jira notes,
Right.
right?
Right.
And it's like I was like, oh my gosh, I was like working on this AEM project, and I was like, it can't be this hard,
Right.
right? We're just building the internet. And I remember they came back and we had done all these red lines and all this stuff, and they were like, oh, uh, you know, what SVP, the small viewport isn't in scope for this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And
I
not
was
in
like,
scope. The word
I was
no
like,
word, the words no one wants to hear.
what are you talking about? Like,
Yeah.
mobile's not in scope. They're like,
Yeah.
yeah, we're not prioritizing that right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Because mobile is apparently new and not really well adopted.
yeah. So we're gonna see how that mobile thing plays out. But I mean, and so I was looking around, but at the time I was looking at, uh, you know, I'd had experience with WordPress, and I'd already had my great experience with AEM, which was not good, and then Drupal, and I was like, man, if I just wanted to hire a team of really grumpy developers, then that's the platform for me. And then there was other things like Macaw. I don't know if you remember this from
I
back in the
do
day.
know. I did
Anyway,
not.
it was like one of these visual development tools. And I looked at Webflow, and I remember at the time I didn't believe in it. I was like, yeah, I was, because all these tools, they lie,
Yeah,
I'm
it's
like,
too good to be true, right?
too good to be true. Um, but there was this video from Sergi, who's one of the co-founders
Yeah.
of,
Uh-huh.
and he was talking about their mission, which was about how to, you know, democratize the web, shorten that distance between idea and execution. But more than all of that, I just really liked Sergi.
Yeah.
Like I was just like, man, and he was talking about how they didn't get into Y Combinator the first time
Yeah. Yeah.
and stuff like that. And I was just like, as a human, I like what he's talking about. I like the ethos of what they're trying to do. And I think one of the things that's amazing after all this time is that that sentiment, like that heart, is still there. And I
Absolutely.
think what you're referencing to, that experience, is something that even for me on day one, that's what I believed in,
Yeah.
because, you know, I view business as it's a relationship business. All business is about relationships, and we use marketing to try to scale relationships,
Right.
and sales in terms of how to cultivate relationships. But at the end of the day, it's like, what is the feeling that you have about working with a particular
Right.
group or product or whatever? And so, yeah, it was just, it's great to see that that's still there. And I'm thrilled to hear that that was something that drew you in as well. I would actually say that they have the best technology. But
Okay.
but I hear you that, like, yeah, like there's definitely considerations,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
like
And
whenever
and
you're
I
going.
mean, best is subjective,
Sure. It's
right?
like, well, it's like, oh, if you want to be like, oh, but there's all these, like, there's a buyer persona that I call when we're on RFPs, and
Yeah.
I call them Bob, right? So Bob's full name, Bob works in IT, and they're, have a very prospective very unique perspective. And their full name is What About Bob, because they go into the calls and they're like, well, what about this? What about this? What
Yeah,
about this?
that's right.
you know,
That's right.
and I'm like, really? Like that's what you're trying to do?
Yeah,
Like, do you really need to have X, Y, or Z?
right.
Um, so
It's the people who focus on the 20 up the 80-20 rule,
yeah,
right?
like, but not even the 20. It might be like the 2%,
Yeah, the
right? So
2%,
yeah.
right.
But but yeah, so anyway, but I I think that what you're talking about though is really the critical thing, where as you look at your partners,
Yeah,
right? And what I see is, like, who are you going to call on your best day and your hardest day?
right.
And so I think that's something that, one, I see in your team,
Yeah,
as well as, when we're working with our platforms like Webflow.
yeah,
And if there's something that's going on, and, we have built up that relationship with them, have an incredible way that we're able to work with them. But definitely, like, that kind of, that trust and the shared responsibility is something
yeah.
that's pretty unique.
Well, not to butter you up, but I think there's that same feeling with your team. I mean, I feel when we get to work with your developers, it just it's one of those things where it's always like, yeah, how can we help?
Yep.
We're on it. We are going to fix this, and whatever it takes to get it done. And I
Yep.
think that that's where across the board with the Webflow ecosystem, with your team, we very much felt that we are partners. Like we feel like we're all part
Yep.
of the same team, as opposed to an outside vendor or an
Oh yeah.
agency. So I think that's the key for anyone who's listening. Like websites, there to your point, Mason, there are good days, there are bad days. And it's the
Mhm.
bad days where you want somebody who is right there alongside you, not
Yep.
like, oh, I'm sorry, we're over capacity, right now. So you're gonna have to wait, 2 or 3 days, that kind of thing. So that I think is the key here. I mean, everyone on my web team, they love working with Webflow, they love working with Edgar Allan, and that is the key. Is that on the good days, on the bad days, if there's that relationship there,
Yep.
there's that strong partnership there, and the sense of shared ownership. It covers all sorts of minor kind of issues, or lack of certain technology
Sure.
or lack of certain features. And I think that's the thing that really, I think, has been a highlight of our partnership with your team and with Webflow, is just really the people. To your point, it's been a big part of that kind of shared culture, and also therefore shared responsibility, and shared wins, if you will, together when
Yo, yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, I'd love to, like, speaking of wins, like, what are some, like, success stories that you've kind of had over the last few years? Like, not to just, I know it's kind of funny to brag about yourself and your team, but I mean, you guys have been doing some incredible stuff. So what are the wins? Like, you saw this need,
yeah.
went through this process, got it designed, built, out into the world, 2 years in, like, what what's been working?
I think my team's gonna kill me, because some of these the wins are, for me, the mundane stuff.
Mm.
So a good example of this, I remember when I first started, was I think 3 weeks on the job, and I was working with our previous website, and we were talking about this big campaign that we needed to do for one of our emerging businesses. Big area, we were pushing really strong. Everyone was trying to build out the marketing campaign for it, and we're like, okay, we need a landing page for it, right? Not very difficult. Like we weren't planning anything particularly complex, but I was talking to the developer, and he's like, "Yep, it's going to take 2 3 months for this to get done." We're like, "Whoa, what the heck?" And I was like, at the time, I was brand new, so I was like,
Yeah.
"There's no way it's going to take that long." I was like, "Let me dive into the code. Let me take a look at it." And I was like, "Oh, we don't have permissions to do this. It's hosted on some other server overseas somewhere, and we can only call them during their hours, and it's not in scope, or
Yeah.
and somebody has the access keys to the backend servers, and that person is no longer here. So we have to do this weird thing where we have to inject code with GTM, and it not mobile
Yeah.
friendly. So this is only a desktop campaign." And I was like, holy moly, how is it taking us this long to create a landing page? Fast forward, I think a year and a half, we've launched a new website. It was the day that we launched the website, and it went so smoothly. I was shocked. I'd planned, like a 6 hour war room,
War room, and yeah.
and everyone was in there, and then we literally pressed the button, and I was like, it's done. And I was like, what? I kind of wanted it to be harder, because I was like, it's a built up to that moment, but it was so smooth. And I get my worst nightmare. A guy from our one of our business team runs into my office and says, "Hey, we had an old page on the website. that was for clients to upload these files. That's no longer there. And I was so grateful that he came to me rather than was like, where the heck is it? He was like, I
Yep.
know you're working on the website. Now, again, goes to show some of the partnership we built across the company where somebody felt comfortable. But
Yep.
I was like, holy crap, this is going to impact a client experience. And we didn't have this. We completely missed this. This wasn't part of any of our migration maps. I get into the system, my web team gets in the system 5 minutes later. We're out, problem solved. No one even
Good.
noticed, so, and I was like, that is a win in my book. We were able to deploy something that was highly could have been a huge problem, right?
Yep.
This was
Yep.
for clients to upload files, and it was, a pretty simple like iframe, get it in. But I know on our old website, be well, push a ticket into our external partner,
Jira.
wait for it to push through and percolate through all the different servers and everything. And I was like, this is, I think, a huge example. And that same kind of mentality has been carried over through so much of stuff we do now. We're to a point where Allison and Emma on my team, I'm telling them to like slow down because everyone's expecting to be able to push things within, hours now. We're not even talking about
Yep.
24 hours. It's like done like that. And they're just cranking things out at such a high quality that there's now an expectation built in. Yeah, I can get things to them last minute and it will go live. But all joking aside, that's been one of the biggest wins is our ability to meet the speed of our business, the speed of our stakeholders, where we are able to serve them very, very well because we're able to turn around things quickly, to turn around things well,
Yep.
and to do things on our own that normally you wouldn't be able to do if you had to have an engineering team involved. So that's been, I think, a huge win for us. Is just the speed of the turnaround.
Sure.
And then I think another thing that I would highlight is we just have such a better understanding of what our website is doing now. We've been able to add certain tracking things that we haven't been able to do before. We've done some really cool things with your team where we've extended the capabilities of Webflow to be able to do like a watermarked PDF, to be
Yep.
able to send something out that's personalized to the person who's receiving it. And that has been a factor of Webflow being a platform that is designed to be kind of extensible. It's designed to carry a multitude of uses as opposed to locking you into a
Yep.
specific, extension or a specific feature that they may or may not offer. And that's been really interesting to be able to see Webflow not just say, hey, stay within our walled ecosystem, but to partner with all of the different agencies out there, to partner with all the other marketing tools that are out there, to be able to allow for an open API to go between tools that they may not have a native integration, which allows us to do a lot of things that we would not be able to do otherwise. And quite frankly, relatively cheaply. I mean,
Yep.
there are some walled ecosystems out there that as long as you stay within that ecosystem, you can do whatever you want, but they're hugely expensive and require a huge amount of investment in both a technical team, a marketing team, and then a piece of software. And Webflow really gives us that best of both worlds, if you will. We can connect with all the tools that we want to connect with. We can do a lot of really cool things with it on our own with developers with lots of experience like your team. And that really just helps, I think, Webflow grow with our company. So we've seen where when we initially started, we were really kind of a brochureware site. We are now starting to make inroads into interactive experiences, and that probably ties into what we're talking about later. But what we're looking forward to next year is how do we take that next step? So beyond just displaying content, allowing people to engage with content, how do we leverage AI to help us develop more personalized experiences? Those are all things that we're now able to think about because we have partners like you, because we have a tool like Webflow that allows us that kind of freedom of this is what you have now
Yep.
that meets your needs, but it can grow with you as your technical needs and technical capabilities grow.
Yeah, 100%. And I think just, you know, you had said like, oh, this is a sort of boring win, but I mean, getting the fundamentals right
Yeah,
is fundamental,
that's right.
and being able to, be in good service to your larger business units and business groups, and have the malleability and flexibility to turn things around quickly, be a great partner internally. That's key. It's one of those things where it makes your job easier. It makes everyone else be like, oh wow, that was like magic.
Yeah,
And then from there you can go in and include the change management around like, well, let's, don't just walk in my office here, like at least submit a form because we've got some other stuff that we're working on or whatever. uh, we will turn it around quickly. It might be 24 hours. Just I'm going to get it to it after lunch,
yeah.
type of thing. um,
And to add on to that, I will say the biggest outcome from that has been a much better trust, I think,
yeah,
of the website and what in the businesses. I mean, there's nothing I love more when a business stakeholder sends us something, we take care of it, and the next time they come to us and say, I have a piece of content that I want to get on the website, we're like, that's what we need to be at, where you
yeah,
need to be coming to us and saying, I want to leverage the website as a tool. Whereas previously, a lot of the business, and rightfully so, just said, I don't send anyone to the website because A, it doesn't look good, and B, I don't think it's going to be, I'm not able to get what I need it to do in quickly. So that's been the biggest shift. And that's something I've been very grateful for our business stakeholders, for our leadership in terms of pushing that change. That's been the biggest change, I think, in it, when it comes to the website, is that there are more people across the company now that are submitting content to us, that are leveraging the website as a sales and marketing tool, as opposed to viewing it as this kind of black sheep that they want to kind of hide, from their clients, from their prospects, because it doesn't accurately reflect what they do.
Yeah. Well, I think, well, first, congratulations,
Thank you.
to your team and how you guys have been able to operationalize this and meet the needs of the business, and then from there transform. Which, it's funny, that theme of the site is just a brochure, and no one. It was almost like for a long time, because you had to go in and bring in. I'm going to pick on Deloitte here, but
Yeah.
bring in, like, the team from Deloitte to go and do anything, and like, I mean, that there's some fun pageantry and all that, and I love those dinners, but then it's just like, sort of, it's like, oh gosh, do I really want to go in and go through all that again? Or like, do we need to go and spend that $4 million just to update a series of pages, or
Right.
whatever?
Right, of course, inevitably, you have halfway through the project, something changes because the business changes, and
Yeah.
now you're back all over
Well,
again. So,
yeah. Yeah. I mean, and
so
like, going through an 18-month turn on something, and then like the whole world has changed.
right, right.
So it's not just even the business. Um, so, as you're sort of looking forward, and the whole world has changed, right? So when we launched, I remember
Yeah.
we like ChatGPT had just kind of come out,
Yep,
and we
yep.
had some conversations, and your CEO was asking, like, oh, what is the impact of AI going to be, and how are we going to think about this? And I'm curious now, like, what you're seeing, and I know a little bit of the answer here, but uh, how you're kind of prepping for this next version of the internet.
It's a I mean, I don't think I have the answer, because if I'd had the answer, I think I'd be somewhere else,
Yeah.
making tons and tons of money. No, everyone's asking this question, right? And I think for us, it's particularly interesting because of our business, right? To your earlier point, at the end of the day, it's a relationship, and nowhere is it more felt, I think, in an industry like commercial real estate, where you are talking with experts at Walker and Dunlop, people that you trust, that have carried you through, multiple different transactions, that have developed a reputation. So there is a very personal relationship there. So one of the things we've, struggled with a lot, at least for me in digital, has been, it's not like e-commerce where you can see the transaction and it's very transactional, right? Sometimes with e-commerce transactions, you don't see the other person on the end, and you don't want to,
Yep.
unless there's a problem, in which case, you're already unhappy, and you're, trying to get customer service or something. But it's very different here. So we're always asking, like, well, are people really searching on Google for the terms that we are, yes, they are, but maybe not in the sense of being high intent, or maybe they're not at the stage where they're ready to talk to somebody yet.
Mm.
Are they on social? That's another question. Like, they're on LinkedIn, we know, but do they want to interact with us on LinkedIn? Do they feel comfortable interacting with companies? Is it too salesy? We've run into that problem with email, all sorts of channels.
Yep.
The big game changer is, we know, based on the data that we're seeing, but also just experience inside our company, everyone's using ChatGPT, everyone's using Claude, Gemini, and they're doing so in very highly personal ways. They are
Mhm.
treating it as a almost they're really actually treating it as a digital person, as a digital resource. And those interactions are very personal, they're very contextualized. So we know it's the next battleground in a way that I think, Google absolute search was,
Sure.
mobile, and so, but in a way that is very, very different than it has been, especially in an industry like commercial real estate. So one of the things I'm thinking about is, okay, right now we're in the early stages of monetizing that, right? And talk about not owning your own content, owning your own data. I mean, ChatGPT owns the ecosystem, right? They get to determine what people see. They get to pitch it as authoritative or not authoritative. And they have a vested interest in keeping people in their platform more so than any other tool now, right? Like Google, at least, they'll link off to your content,
Yep.
Google search, or, social media, same exact way, right? Or you own your own page. But ChatGPT is taking all of this content. And people, we know our audience is engaging with it. So we want to be there. The question is, what is that going to look like, and how do we best invest in that now, especially when there's a lot of hype around things right now. There's a lot of tools out there claiming to be able to do X, Y, and Z,
Yep.
and there's a lot of noise, therefore, in terms of what you invest in. So For us, what we're looking at, I think, in terms of how we know that AI is a huge part of our customers, our clients, kind of journey now, day to day. So we're looking really investing heavily in content. Shout out to Sam Patel and her team here. They've been pushing that narrative for the longest time now, and I think
Yeah.
with ChatGPT, with us, all of these answer engines, we're finally starting to get the story across that hey, content is where it's really at. It's
Yep.
not that it's never been important. Actually, it's been the most important thing. And they've done a lot of great work to build that up over the years. But now there's an added level of urgency on that. All this content is feeding into these engines. If you don't have content, you're not there. I can put up a display ad, I can put up lots and lots of search ads. I cannot give ChatGPT content that doesn't exist. And I
Yep.
think our content team has been really good and very diligent about building that up and building up the infrastructure for that. So that's one of the things that we're thinking very heavily around this year is how do we take all of the content that we're developing,
Yep.
how do we set it up in such a way that it's a very valuable. I know a lot of people out there are claiming they can generate content, SEO content, AEO content with AI, and the obvious question is why would AI care about your content if it's generated by AI? It's
Yeah.
already got that, right? So
Yeah.
there's a sense in which we need to invest in the people, the resources, the experts, and the writing to develop that content out. And then from the web standpoint, my team is looking at it going, what's the next battleground for displaying that content,
Yep.
getting people engaged? Because now getting you out of ChatGPT is going to require something extra, some additional thing that you're not getting in ChatGPT, whether that's visualizations, whether that's personalized data, whether that's interactivity that you don't get out of ChatGPT. So we're looking at that and saying, okay, with all the work that Sam and her team are doing in content, with all of the amount that our leadership is investing in that kind of sphere, how do we execute on the web side of
Yep.
things to give it the most impact and really compel people to come out of ChatGPT or have ChatGPT and other engines, Gemini, Claude, push that traffic through to land on our page and develop that experience. So I think that's really what we're going to be focused on next year. And then the second half of this is how do we invest in the people, our people on our team. That's one of the things that I'm very impressed with what Walker and Dunlop doing is we recognize our leadership has recognized this isn't about firing people or getting rid of people or
Yep.
replacing people. It's very much about making the experts that we have here better. I think there was something I read which was saying they were comparing like junior level engineers with senior engineers. And they were saying the 10x productivity you get is not with a junior engineer using AI. It's with the engineer that has the experience, that knows what they're doing,
Yep.
that can use that to kind of extend them because they only have a certain amount of time. It
Yep.
can save them time. And that's one of the things that our company has I think really embraced is the idea that we need to continue training all the people on our teams in AI usage, but also in the core
Yep.
competency so they can then better use it and better customize the answer engines to help us be more productive. So that's one of the things that we're focusing on as a marketing team, on the digital team, is really looking at ChatGPT both as an assistant, but less so that more as a teaching tool. How do we use it to tell somebody not just how to do something, but why it needs to be done and explain some of the nuances behind it, or train them in a way that makes sense to them. I think that's one of the biggest benefits that we've seen. I was talking to our email person who she's incredibly creative. She loves to, she's really good at the was it left brain or right brain? So basically, the creative aspect of things. She's like, I don't really get some of this technical stuff, and I was trying to go through with some of this with her. And one thing that she's found very helpful is to take some of the technical, put it in there, and have it come back to her in terms that she really can engage with. And I think that's the biggest thing that I'm encouraging my team to do is not rely on ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini as a crutch or as a handicap just to get an answer. Really use it as a tool to help refine their understanding of things, and also as a way to, kind of bring the insight out of the noise, if you will. So that's really the two areas I think we're focused most heavily on, at least in the digital team here at Walker and Dunlop.
Yeah. And I think if I was to just, uh, have that snapshot of how is it that you're investing not just in content, right? So it's not just about spray and pray anymore, which interestingly, one of the things that I see that's happening with the rise of AI is that actually, in some ways, the web is becoming more human,
Yeah,
and the value is really on how to have a distinctly human experience.
yeah, yeah.
Whereas before, interestingly, with search, because it was keywords,
Yes, yeah, Right.
And so keywords, it's robotic and it was mathematical,
Right.
as opposed to today, which is about how do you go through and provide the context for why what you do is important and how you do it. And the thing that we're seeing is that the website is really becoming it's becoming an owned piece of media in a
Yeah.
real way that
Right.
sits between your paid and your earned.
Right.
So your earned is out there kind of getting you authority,
Right.
and then your paid is what you can go through and help to, you know, increase overall visibility and awareness and help to sort of
Amplification. Right.
juice that in different ways.
Yeah.
But the website or the owned media experience really needs to sit at the middle of
Yeah.
that. And so, I think uh, brand has always been said as like, it's not what you say about yourself, it's what others are saying about you.
Right.
And that's even more important now because it's not just what other humans are saying, but it's what other knowledge tools
Right.
like Claude and whatever are saying about your company.
Right.
And um, something that we've seen with other customers is where search traffic has gone down, but conversions have gone up. Um,
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So, really, for those that are investing like you guys
Right.
around, what are the question answer pairs? Who is your customer? What are the things that they're really, really challenged with? And
Yeah.
how is it that we can very specifically address those jobs to be done?
Yeah.
You know, whereas for a long time, especially in the just pure SEO world where it was kind of like these keywords and it was like, well, we had to sort of be everyone to everybody. And there's
Right.
these vague headlines of, you know, bringing industry value to it's like some sort of like headline. And I would like read a website and I'd be like, I have no idea
Yeah.
what, what this means. Um,
It was a word spaghetti, right? Well,
yeah,
actually,
we're corporate word spaghetti.
I'm curious, and from your standpoint, Mason, given because there's multiple extremes. There's search is dead, right? Long live ChatGPT, and there's another stream which is ChatGPT is just SEO on steroids, right? What are you guys seeing and what are you guys advising your clients in terms of how do you continue investing in SEO versus the AEO, especially with everyone talking about like where do I put my resources and what do I want to invest in? Like how are you guys what is your take on that kind of balance between the two? Or is that balance a kind of a false dichotomy? It's kind of one and the same.
I think it's what SEO should have always been,
Okay.
is what I would say. And it's I think a realignment and a gradation. So it's not that keywords are
Right.
necessarily gone, because like keywords are still important. And I think in some ways, like, you're just, if there's one particular term that you're looking for and wanting to be able to rank for that. But
Right.
um even a lot of the tools though, Hrefs and SEM, SEMrush and whatever,
Yeah.
it's like you would go and pick a handful of keywords and then you would see yourself next to your competitors listed around that in a ranking, and
Right.
you'd be like, oh, and I want to be there. But just as you were talking about, which gets into your second point here, which is around how to use AI not as a replacement, but as leverage,
Yeah.
right? That as you write content that is not fluff,
Yeah.
right? That has a really good brand voice and is very specific, and that can be specifically interpreted so that if someone has a question about commercial real estate or they're challenged for something, or maybe like they're being thrown into a role that they've never done something before,
Right.
and they need to go and put that question in the context of what they can understand, then they can go and leverage these tools to kind of teach themselves or have their ideas restructured in a way which makes more sense, or whatever that might be. But the responsibility now of brands is how to make sure that we're being, I think, as judicious as possible
Yeah.
to very specifically, again, focus on that job to be done. That's the biggest thing. Whereas before, it would be sort of keyword stacking that happened in a paragraph. And
Right.
we've all been guilty of that. And I think there's still some,
Yeah.
like, there's still some need of that. So it's a transition that we're going to go through. Gemini right now is an extension of SEO, right? So you can go and have AI mode, or you can just go and have traditional search.
Right.
So what we're advising is that it's more of a yes and,
Okay. Yep.
rather than, oh, I think the catchy headlines are burn it all down, right? Or you're like, it's all, throw it all out.
Right.
I
Everything you know is wrong. This is an
everything 10 things you didn't know that you were doing wrong that are going to change whatever. It's not that easy. At the same time, again, I go back to, this is really what it should have been all along,
yeah, that's a great
where
point. Yeah,
where those that are doing the really good work of, having third party authority, which is great. So it's like, go out there, go do these events, go and be mentioned, go and have what other people are saying about you. Be really specific about what you're working on your site, right? And so have all those question answer pairs. Have some summations at the end of articles where it's saying like, hey, here's some FAQs. Like, there's some structural things that can happen in there that
yeah,
are definitely helping. But I don't know. I think it's exciting because we're able to shift now from, again, like a brochure, which was just sort of like set it and forget it, and then maybe go in and try to have some keyword stacking, but it was so constrained, right? And that was, um, it's attributed to Marshall McLuhan, but I can't remember who said it originally. But it's like, medium is the message. Marshall McLuhan did say that. Who I was thinking about is, first we create our tools, and then our tools. First we shape our tools, then our tools shape us, right?
yeah,
So I think that's what we're starting to see now, is that the tools are starting to shape like how we're then re-interacting
yeah,
with those. So, I mean, I think now having the flexibility with a platform like Webflow
right.
of, oh, now let's go and make all of these updates. And then just, for us, the next platforms that we're really heavily investing in
Yeah.
is Profound,
Okay.
so we've now, like, that's in terms of partnerships or whatever. Profound is the group that we've decided to really go all in with in terms
Got
of
it.
this next phase, and that allows us to have really a good understanding of both those keywords and then those question answer pairs. So it's more of a, like, that analytics side, and then the other one is air ops. So we have been exploring air ops. We haven't fully implemented it yet, but I really like where they're going, which is around how to scale out some of that content in a structured way.
Okay.
But I think the first part of this is have an understanding of just what's happening, and then be able to make those informed decisions, understand how you need to operationalize that inside of a group. And then from there, look at like, oh, now that we're really scaling that out, a tool like AirOps can allow us to go and scale out that content operations.
And to that point, I think it's a really great thing for anyone in, marketing, or actually any business unit that is looking at AI. I think 90% of the time everyone focuses on the technology,
Yep.
ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, which one is better, which model is better. But really, when it comes down to this kind of like change, a lot of it comes down to process. I don't think people are afraid of change. I think a lot of it comes down to, am I included in that process? Am
Yep.
I able to see where it's going to benefit me? And am I getting the adequate support and training? And that's, again, one of the things that we're focused on here is we have this great AI working group that our technology team is leading to pilot some of this out. We haven't rolled it out across the company yet. I believe we're planning to do so, next year. But the goal was, and the understanding was, that we can't just throw this at everybody. And I've heard, some other CEOs at other companies say, you better be using AI or you're going to be out of a
Yeah.
job, right? And that's like, that amount of fear that doesn't really help
Yep.
increase productivity. And I think one thing that I've really appreciated about how our company has been rolling it out is very thoughtfully looking at it and saying, okay, how do we balance the security? How do we balance the usage? How do we measure productivity out of it? I'm hearing about use cases that are being used in other departments for document review, things that I can then use with my team in terms of doing email review or web page review. And those are the kind of things that I think anyone who's leading a team needs to be thinking about, is beyond the technology. How is my team working to change or update our processes to make sure that everyone on the team is supported with AI, and not just being kind of thrown this and said, use it or
Yeah.
lose it, as it were.
Yeah.
So that I think I really appreciate you kind of diving into the nuance of that, because it's kind of a both and, right? You have the technology, the stuff, the processes that you've already been doing, you've established really well. This
Yeah.
is not to replace or burn any of it down. This is to better align what we're doing to have an extra additional resource that we would not be able to have otherwise, that can help us do what we always intended to do, and or do it even better than we have before.
Amazing. And something I can, as we're kind of rounding out on time here, first off, thank you,
Of course.
Coco.
So
This
much
is super fun. If you're up for it, I'd love to be able to, continue this and do it
Of
another
course. Yeah,
time.
yeah, of course.
Because I feel like every time we talk, we end up going over, and
Yeah.
it's like just really great. But as you were talking or whatever, I was reminded of this story. And next time you fly, this might give you something to think about as it relates to AI. And it was some time ago, and Boeing was looking at how to go through, and I could be messing up who is who the aircraft maker
Right.
is, but they were looking at designs for how to go and create additional lift and efficiency on their wings. Are you familiar with this story?
No, but I mean, so is it to do with the winglets, that
Yeah,
they
yeah, the winglets at the end. So they went through and they did all these design revisions and had all these different kind of like propeller and like all this, all these different very complicated ways of trying to add additional efficiency. And what they came up with was the winglets at the end. So it was really just looking at what is already happening within that sort of that space, and then looking at what's the simplest thing that they could go and do to add to the end. And I think all too often we're looking at like how we can go and have extra leverage or whatever, and we're overthinking about it, and we're like,
Yes.
oh, we're just going to put AI on it,
Right.
right? Whereas so many times it's like, well, what's the really elegant way of approaching this? And I think those winglets are a great example of, well, sometimes you just need to have it turn just a small corner,
Yeah.
and that's all you really need.
Right.
So I think looking at how to go through and gain leverage, which is what you were talking about, it's like a replacement, uh, not a replacement, but about leverage, and then finding you know, or providing teams the space to explore that on their own, and not saying just put AI on it,
Right.
right? Like from Portlandia, put a bird on it.
Yeah, right.
Um,
Right, right.
so I think that's where teams will come up with innovative solutions, and there's a lot that's happening already.
Yeah,
So it's
agreed.
I think having the space and flexibility to explore that, but explore that in a way which is going to be natural to the medium and not just forced upon because you
Yeah.
need to go and put a interesting propeller on the end of a wing.
Totally agree. I think that the one thing that I'll leave you with, because I love this question that you sent, is what does good look like when it
Mhm.
comes to all this change? And I thought the first thing that came to mind is, well, it's good enough, right? Because right now what AI is allowing us to do is go out and not have a huge design,
Yep.
feasibility study. It's get it good enough. So to your point, we tend to like to over engineer everything, and we see that with happening with AI too, where we'll sit all day writing prompts, and it's like at the end of the day, though, we are responsible. We are, and our teams need to be empowered to actually execute on some of this stuff. So it's one thing to provide that tool. At the end of the day, somebody needs to take responsibility to take that output from ChatGPT or that recommendation or whatever we ask, Claude, Gemini to do, and actually action on it. And I think that's the biggest step that I'm focused on is how do I empower our teams? How do I also build that trust with my boss, with my stakeholders, so that we can move at the speed that these tools allow us to do. And I think that's going to be a big focus for us this year, and something I'm still struggling to figure out how to do too. And this is the one thing again. I'll leave this with the trust that we've built with you guys with Webflow, the trust that has then extended to the rest of the company by seeing the excellence of the work that has come out of the website is that first step. And that's why I'm looking at it going, that is beyond ChatGPT, beyond the tool that your Webflow optimize and analyze. The really silver bullet factor for me is none of those technology. It's that trust that I have with Carol, our CMO, that
Yep.
I have with our business stakeholders, that I can go out and try some of this stuff and really action on it without getting questions like, is it going to go off the rails or is this going to be a bad investment? So those are, I think, the biggest places where I think most people tend to forget about because we see that. And I'm the same way. I love the technology. It's so cool. But I always have to like rein myself back and say, am I focusing on the right thing? Is the process there to support that? Am I achieving the goal that this tool is designed to do?
Yeah, and it's funny. I had a whole list of questions that I'd sent out. I was love to get into those in another time, but I feel like we hit on the high points. But
Yeah, I think the best discussions too are ones where you
yeah,
don't hit any of the points that you meant to.
um, but yeah, you're talking there, and I was thinking about how you know there is the need to just at the end of the day look at how to fall in love with the problem, not the solution. And oftentimes it's so easy to be like, oh, here's an awesome solution. And we can just be surrounded by solutions.
Yes.
But it's like, what's the problem that our customer is trying to solve for? How can we help that in a really specific and really direct way that makes sense to operationalize? And then we can experiment with different ways of approaching that. And I think, the thing that sounds like you've been empowered with and that you're empowering your team with is approaching those problems in different ways, and then trying to find the space to be really deliberate around like what are the challenges that you're going to be like really addressing for the business and within your market. So I think that's fantastic,
Yeah.
and probably a good note to leave our
Yes.
conversation on here. So
This has been great talking with you, Mason. I definitely learned a lot, and I appreciate you answering the question about the SEO AEO. I'm definitely excited to chat that through with our team here. And
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I know that we'll continue kind of this conversation for sure, and not live and in some of the work.
of course,
And yeah, but it's really, I think, it's an exciting time where the web is changing, I think, more fundamentally than it probably ever has,
yeah,
right? So I think I look at these big inflection points of getting free CDs in the mail.
yeah.
Yeah.
I remember
Yeah.
those. Yep, yep,
Right. And then like having the web in your pocket, right?
yeah,
So just being able to have it on a phone and being able to have this remote control. And now moving into where we have, not just an information age, but a knowledge age, and being
yeah,
able to work with these knowledge workers, and then thinking about like, oh, how are we going to go in and fall in love with these new problems that,
yeah.
our customers are going to have.
Yeah, and they're very interesting problems. So
Yeah,
that's me.
absolutely.
I was like, there's no better time because these are really hard, but really, really fun problems to think through. And to your point, they dip into the core of the human experience. And that, I think, to your point, is what's so exciting about AI is it's actually making the web more human. I think that was it's not a way I'd thought about it before, and it's a really good way of encapsulating some of the nuances, the difficulties, and some of the scary parts of AI, but also the most exciting parts of it because it touches upon us in a way that the rest of JavaScript or HTML or
Oh
CSS.
yeah. Well, and I guess what I'm getting at here is the thing that becomes the most valuable is the humanness.
Right.
And even you'll notice, so sometimes in my LinkedIn post, I'll intentionally leave little like grammatical errors.
Oh, yeah, so we know
I'm
it's
also
you.
really good at grammatical errors, so that goes a long way. But it kind of speaks to like, oh, there's some that were not perfect,
Yeah,
and the sort of imperfections. But even more in a more practical setting, like this conversation right here, like something I'm really focused in on, and why I'm trying to do these like LinkedIn lives once a week is that you know a 15-second video clip of a problem that you've been solving or that we've solved together or whatever, um, that has so much more authenticity than anything that I could ever go in and write.
yeah,
Or as you're looking at this next year and looking at what's the role of events, or what's the role of like all these different things that really play into that, and so leaning into humanness and then looking at AI as a lever to start to expand that reach is, I think, what's exciting.
yeah. Absolutely agree. Can't agree more. It was great
So
talking with you, Mason. We got to
yeah,
do.
Coco, awesome to be able to hang out with you this afternoon. Enjoy the evening. Everyone else, if you have questions, other things you'd love for us to dig into, just throw them in the comments, and look forward to having our next conversation. So thanks, Coco.
Absolutely. Happy holidays, everyone.
All right.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks very much. See ya. Bye.